Hello, folks, and welcome to Film Optimist, where we talk about all things film with a generous dose of optimism. I'm your co-host, Seth Boyd.
I am Megan Tierney.
Folks, we are entering new territory for a film podcast. We're in a realm known to soap operas and wrestling. We have a villain of the podcast now. We have a heel. Trenton Cressy has decided to come back on the podcast. If you haven't heard our episode on Drive, listen to that. But given the opportunity to talk about whatever movie in the world Trenton would like, he has consciously chosen to do a movie that he knows at least one of us, me, hated initially. So, Trenton, thank you for coming back on the podcast and for making us analyze a movie with the film optimism, our sticking to our mission statement here. Welcome, Trenton Cressy.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to say I do apologize for making you watch movies that you don't love, but I am glad that we're testing the limits of optimism with the film Optimism. And I don't want to be the film pessimist, but I do enjoy being the villain of the podcast.
I hope you add this to your business card. And it is important. I think both films you've brought to us now are movies that my opinion has changed on, because it has been at least I think a total of maybe 10 years since I've seen each movie initially. So we're going to introduce the movie as Being John Malkovich. A lot to discuss here. Megan, this was your first time seeing it, right?
Yes. So I'm oddball out in this reanalysis. But Seth,
Right.
I'm shocked to hear that you hated this movie upon first watch, like to
Yeah,
use that word. But
that was not a mistake. That was the word. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit this time. I will get more into what I kind of noticed differently, etc. But Trin, before you give your kind of pitch, I think you knew that I really didn't like it. I think for me, I was the factor here as I was maybe 17 when I saw it. You know, so tastes have changed quite a bit. It's been nearly 15 years, and it just to me went from being a kind of whimsical, strange movie to a deeply upsetting movie in the third act, and a way that I did not find to still be funny. Like there was definitely uncomfortableness throughout the whole movie, and so that bothered me. But I think it is mostly I just felt kind of like a muted surrealist movie. I really still prefer like a David Lynch surreal where you're genuinely wondering what scene actually happened, what was real, what was reality. There's not really any scene in this movie where you think was not canonical part of the movie, you know, and you have some quirky, weird things happening. You have these moments of intense imagery, but a lot of it just looks like people in New York. You know, a lot of it just looks like kind of a gray, dreary office. Even it's kind of shorter. It's not as lush to look at as like a Fellini movie or a Lynch movie, and something I'm expecting from a surrealist movie. So it's kind of disappointing in that way. But yeah, I think mostly I was just immature and wanted a funnier movie. When I did actually like it quite a bit. I saw some problems with it. I don't love it, but I definitely will say this is a good movie, a well-made movie, and I'm glad I revisited it. Trenton, I think I told you that I woke up in the middle of the night very angry, remembering that I had agreed to watch this movie with you. So this is what the thing I was dreading the most. I have recently watched some of the most challenging movies ever made, like Sallow and Come and See, and those were easier for me to get into and to watch than rewatching Being John Malkovich because I hated it so much the first time. So, folks, if you really hated a movie that you haven't seen in 15 years, maybe think about it again. It could be your taste of change and you actually like it now. Trenton, with that being said, let's hear your initial why did you want us to watch this, and why did you think, especially that I didn't like it, why did you want me to rewatch it? Were you kind of hoping I would get out of it on a retake and Megan would get on the first time?
Oh, I'm just a sadist, and so I wanted to make you watch it again. Because actually, I legitimately had a very similar experience to you. I watched it the first time,
great.
and I did not like it. And then I watched it again a little bit later, a few years later, and I loved it. I think that it's not my favorite Charlie Kaufman movie. It's not my favorite Spike Jonze movie, but it does a lot of things that both of them are good at, and also in sort of like an earlier version of that. So instead of kind of, I think I see a lot of connections to like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think there's also kind of some thematic parallels with Her. There's like both of them went on to do other things, even like Adaptation and Synecdoche. Yeah, absolutely. Like all of those I think did a lot of it better, but this was maybe like the first time that they visited those kinds of themes and ideas. And so it's interesting to me to see the way that each of those filmmakers, either as a writer or as a director, sort of evolved in their approach to those ideas. So that's cool to me. And also, like you, I had, this was very much hyped up for me on like film lists where I was starting to get into movies that were a little more off the beaten path. And this kept coming up, and I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then I watched it, and I was like, oh, what? No, because it has so many really great ideas, but then it doesn't really end the way that you expect it to, which is good. But I think jarring the first time that you watch it, maybe. And I'm interested to hear what Megan thinks about it, since she's our only Being John Malkovich virgin.
I'm shocked by your guys' answers, because so my big take is that I really, really enjoyed it this first watch for me. I think that like it also just reintroduced that I'm really into absurdism. I've realized, and I think I like absurdism, especially when it's kind of in still quasi reality. Like I think I do kind of vibe with that. I liked what was going on in this movie with that, and I appreciated the humor in it too. I found it very funny. Like, and I think that and then maybe that's, I agree with you, Seth, about like there was thematic elements in this, like the domestic abuse, and it kind of turned into like, it could have almost gone like thriller territory towards the end, which I was kind of like craving, I felt like. But for me, like I think there was a tonal funniness throughout all of it that I was really vibing with. I don't know, and it was I think that also a lot of surrealism tends to be very like extremely self-serious, which this one was to an extent, but also I think it had like a tongue-in-cheek element to it that I throughout it that kind of stuck with it. This could have been, I just felt like it was such a risk watching the movie. So I think especially nowadays, especially when things are so like through a filter, you have to think about what's going to sell. And I just can't imagine like that any of that ideology was going on while this was being made, or like while these ideas were being thrown out there. I didn't feel it or see it, so that felt really refreshing for me, and maybe why it stuck out to me so much. Like I was just really enjoying it, like along for the ride, basically.
And what you said about it almost like wanting to be a thriller, but then not actually becoming one, I feel like that's another thing that is sort of like a proto version that they're doing to maybe Adaptation, where I think in Adaptation they actually do that full transition into the thriller genre, whereas this is like toying with it. It's like, oh, we want to kind of go for that idea, and then in Adaptation they like fully execute it. And I feel like there are a couple of other things like that.
Cool.
That makes sense, because I think that's thinking again about the I think it's hard not to talk about Lynch. So we'll talk about him. There's a genuine sense of danger in all of his movies. Like the main character could die, you know. And I think that the sense of danger comes pretty late in Being John Malkovich. That I'm going to watch a adaptation, because that makes sense. I think the thriller works really well with it. I think that I should note, a thing I really didn't initially like about it is that I'm glad you said it. There's some tongue-in-cheek elements in it, because you're absolutely right. And I think it's at the first viewing, to me, it seemed very pretentious, and it didn't seem to have anything actually profound to say. On second watch, it's actually very funny that John Cusack just lists off all the implication it brings up, and they never talk about it again. And they find the portal. So, like, he talks about what this means about consciousness and or how you really yourself, and just kind of rapid fire lists the questions the movie raises, and they move on. That's pretty funny, actually, I think, in hindsight. I still don't know if it necessarily says anything all that profound. I'm open to having my mind changed about that one. But it is also important to note, like you're saying, Trin, this was Kaufman and Spike Jonze's first movie. Not just again, they had worked, I think, music videos for Spike Jonze, and Kaufman had written for TV before, but this was their debut feature-length movie. So there certainly is a little bit of a learning curve, growing pains to this movie that is kind of fun to watch.
And I think you and I have talked about this before, Seth, how like seeing the first movie of a director especially can be interesting even if it's not good in the way that it places their overall output. And this one I think is a extremely like exceptional example of a debut. I think like I like, it's not my favorite Kaufman, it's not my favorite Jonze, but like it is definitely up there for me.
I think you're absolutely right. This is, I think, considered among the best debuts for both a screenwriter and a filmmaker, and I think it should be. We should actually maybe go around the room here since we're talking about the two big names, Kaufman and Jonze. Trent, I think you've seen maybe everything from both these guys. Megan, we'll come back to you, but Megan, how familiar are you with Charlie Kaufman and with Spike Jonze? Like their work outside of this.
I was surprised that Jonze directed it. I went in not knowing that. Not really familiar with Charlie Kaufman myself, but I was a huge like Her fan. I really, really liked that movie. I think I recommended it previously on the podcast too. So I won't recommend it today. I have a new pick for that. But I thematically, and I agree with you, Trenton, there were things going on there that I saw in Her, and I think I could see tonal similarities also, like in both of those. So just vaguely familiar, I would say, even with just Spike Jonze. But I enjoyed what I saw so far a lot, basically.
You saw Eternal Sunshine, right?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Sorry. I forgot.
Yeah, so Charlie wrote that one. Charlie Kaufman wrote it, but it's a different director. So. Okay. No, I think that's a good balance. You've seen this, and you've seen work that both have done apart from each other, so that's kind of what you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Trent, am I correct my assumption that you've seen like a lot of it?
I've seen a lot of it. I tried to look up Spike Jonze filmography, but there's like 100 things on IMDb, and most of them are like music videos or TV episodes. So I'm not sure what my.
I think his last movie was a Beastie Boys documentary, and that was the first thing I think he's done since Her. First, I should say, non-music video.
Yeah, and then for Kaufman, it's a little bit easier. So I think that the main gap for me is Anomalisa. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to say it, but I've been wanting to see that for a while.
I don't know either.
I think that was his second directing effort, as well as he wrote it, of course. So I'm more of a Kaufman fan than a Spike Jonze fan. Kaufman, I'm not sure if I'm saying it wrong, but
I've been saying Kaufman, but I could be wrong. It's like Andy Kaufman. I thought it was spelled the same way, but
so there, I think I learned somewhere that Andy Kaufman was Kaufman, and then somebody is Kaufman, and then other people are Kaufman, but it's spelled the same way. So I don't know. It's probably Kaufman.
Should we look this up real quick? I would also say, like, because we were talking about the writer's strike on the podcast as well. Good for Charlie Kaufman. He's very openly, vocally supportive of it, and is giving the interviews. Is one of the bigger names who is willing to talk about why we're doing this, why we're fighting everything. So you always love to see that. I also say, comparing this to Drive, Charlie Kaufman especially is someone who I went into the rewatch knowing I respected. I've liked some of his later work I've seen. I think he's a very talented person. If I'd always jive with him, I think he's still not going to be like. I'm not sure if I'm going to go down and see everything he's done. He's not become my new favorite guy, but he's an interesting, unique voice for sure. That is always going to do something that no one else would make. So I have a lot of respect for him, and more respect for him than this one.
I was really. The dialogue stood out to me like pretty immediately. I mean, not just even the dialogue. I think like the it's almost more than that. It's like the way things were said, the choices, I guess, of dialogue was very specific, I think, in this movie, and felt specific in Her. Her felt a little more like even a little more like based in reality, I think, than this one, obviously. So so in that way, like this one is almost more of a feat, it felt like, of writing and like of getting you on board for this crazy world kind of thing. But again, I did like that it was still kind of tampered down in reality, and I think that it also there's a little bit of nihilism going on, I think, and then also a little bit of like it felt kind of like early 2000s almost, or like 90s era punky vibes is what I got from it kind of. And I think that was like a spirit.
That aesthetic to it. Right?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that spirit kind of like was throughout it, and once you accept, I kind of like accepted that, and then you're a little bit easier like going along with what's going on, is how I felt.
Yeah, that I think there was a really interesting sort of suspension of disbelief, or playing with suspension of disbelief, because whenever he tells anyone, well, first of all, like you always, it feels realistic, like there's this grunginess, this like clutter, like everything feels in a lot of ways more real than other like spaces in other movies that I've seen. Just it feels like more natural, but then at the same time it's completely like surreal and supernatural at the same time. And then when he goes to these characters, the other characters, and he tells them about this portal, they're like, "Oh, are you sure? Oh yeah, okay, let me see." Like there's very little, which I loved about it, because when a movie creates this ridiculous thing and then there's a really long setup of trying to convince the other characters that it's real, when we as the audience already are on board because we've seen it with the main character, it's always annoying to me. It's like, yeah, I know it's a movie, I know it's unrealistic, you don't have to show somebody else being dubious. And so when they just kind of like go along with it, I really like the way they did it. Like it wasn't just accepting it like we know this is part of the rules of our universe, but it was also not wasting time on that sort of annoying trope, I think.
That's a great point, Trent, because I think that is one of my top two most annoying tropes. The other one is anytime it's a buddy movie, they have to break up at some point as friends, and then 20 minutes later they're back together. Like, you can just have a buddy movie where they're buddies the whole time. Like, that's fine. Like, we've all seen that before. How it's going to end. I think just because it's like there's nothing new to do here. But no, that was a great use of time. And as a viewer, maybe the first indication you have that this is not our world is watching the puppeteer on TV that he's really mad about. Is that the guy who has like the 60-foot, is it Truman? I can't remember, that he has like this over a bridge is puppeteering. That's first, like, that's kind of, I guess, plausible, but also really fucking weird, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I also really like that specific, like, I don't know, like 3-second shot of the news story about the 60-foot puppet, because that kind of harkens back to the script that we probably will talk about eventually, but maybe I can introduce now.
Please.
Right. We can dive into it. Yeah. You can introduce it.
Well, basically, I was getting into reading screenplays in one of my nerdier phases. And so I went to the Being John Malkovich screenplay, and I read it because it was recommended somewhere on Reddit, I think. And I was like, oh, wow, this is way different from the movie. Maybe at least what I remember of the movie. And that was the first time that I watched it again. And I really enjoyed watching it again with having read the screenplay, even though it's very different, because it shows you, one, a lot of context and backstory. It's kind of like reading the Silmarillion for Lord of the Rings or something. And then it also like it kind of emphasizes some of the themes that you see in the movie, and clarifies maybe not what he means, but what he was thinking about or targeting. And so the rival puppeteer that is in the screenplay, that's like the only thing we get from him, is that 3-second look at the news clip in the very beginning of the movie. But he's like a more like not a super developed character, if I remember correctly, but he's more involved.
I think the biggest difference between the screenplay and the final movie is that the actual devil is in the screenplay and is the villain. And I have mixed feelings because I do really love a screenplay that just goes for it. I love a story that's like we're really going there, like whether it's the nuclear war happens or something extreme like that. I appreciate that. Also, the devil's very important to me. So I think I wonder how many back and forths this was. My takeaway is that the movie's much better for not being bad ending. What do you guys think?
For me, my biggest difference was that she married the monkey.
See, that I like better, actually.
Yeah. I liked it too. I think that it did produce a lot of like the tonal, like convey what was like kind of being said throughout the movie regarding the animal lover like aspect to. I think like we were just laughing because like they use animal lover in the description of Lottie for. I watched this on like Amazon to rent it, and so that they use those language was a little jarring to see that that she ends up being so yeah, I was just seeing a little bit of that too, but I agree. Like I read as prompted by Trenton, which I totally appreciate, to read like a little bit of the ending at least. Completely different ending. There was the devil in it. She marries the monkey. Like a lot of basically a completely different ending. So and then having read them both, I appreciate, I think, what happened more in the film, because I think that helped not go off the rails, maybe, is how I felt about it. I enjoyed the ending, and it felt like a better pass. Like, honestly, it felt like a better once over than what I saw from the writing.
Yeah, I guess the execs made the right call.
I guess so.
I want to say, I think Carmen Diaz is my favorite part of this movie, actually. She's really great. It's weird. This is when she's still in a lot of rom-coms and stuff, and she's playing this very frumpy character, and she's really going for it. And I respect her for doing that movie at that time when she was still very often leading lady in a rom-com or something like that, or Charlie's Angels. Did not need to have like a bad haircut and not look as glamorous as she normally does. Which I thought was hilarious in it. But
you know what I thought was crazy?
Main-
I just noticed yesterday was that she was wearing brown contacts.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
I almost didn't recognize her at first, but she was great. Like I agree. She was very into her character and not a misbeat at all. Like, it was great.
Trin, I can't remember if I talked to you or Megan offline about the connection between this movie and Get Out.
Oh, I don't think we talked about it, but oh wait, no, we did talk about it. Never mind.
Okay. Megan, are you aware of this? And we're going to make the audience aware of this as well. But
I am not aware of this, and I'd love to hear it.
So Catherine Kinner, I believe is her name, who plays Maxine in this movie, is the evil mom in Get Out. And
yes, that's right.
The theory is that what she's doing Get Out is a further development of the portal technology, essentially. And George Hill actually likes this theory and had it in mind when he wrote it. It's literally him saying, "Yeah, you know what? That's canon. Let's make that real." he loved the theory.
Spoiler alert! But basically, Craig, John Cusack's character, goes to the sunken place.
True.
Like, forever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, he does. Yes. So Megan, I was curious for your take on the Maxine character.
I'm so glad you mentioned that she was in Get Out, because I was trying to place her like the whole movie, and she was a very like I remember, I know I've seen her in other things too myself, but she was great. I mean, really fun to watch. Reminded me of Uma Thurman almost in Pulp Fiction. She had kind of like that element for me. But yeah, fun to watch. That was kind of like for me also the problematic elements of John Malkovich is that it's pinning these I mean, he's kind of a sleazeball in the beginning, obviously, that he
Craig or John Malkovich?
Craig that he's has a relatively normalish life and wife with Cameron Diaz, a sweet Cameron Diaz, and throws it away, doesn't care, apathy towards that, and wants the new and shiny Maxine. And but it's fun character to watch and like see her doing her thing. And I think apathy is kind of a good word for it, because like she's flippant about it too. She doesn't care. She's like she has a very like F you attitude kind of, but
FO.
FO, as Trenton and I, yes, in film optimist fashion, and FO attitude, literally. And to me, it's also funny that she literally kind of does a 180 with that, and with John's character, and that was a little bit of a departure of the script, or like a hard to get behind. I forget even was the switch where she was totally down for being.
I really like that part.
Okay, yeah, and
where when Craig's controlling John Malkovich, now she's attracted to
right.
Yeah.
And I forget that I was like, I just can't even remember like when that happened in the film, but
Sure.
and that she's like so immediately on board, but then things later on reveal that that's not really a part of it. So a lot going on with Maxine, I guess.
I think I don't know how well written of the characters, but I think the actress Kevin Kenner does a lot of it, because it kind of could easily be written by a guy who just got rejected by a coworker and angry about it, is kind of how it initially comes off. But she's so good at this person who in a different movie is a full-on femme fatale, and she kind of is, but also Craig sucks, you don't really feel too bad for him. Like you said, he's very, one, it sounds like it's been a while since he's made any money to contribute to their household, since he's insisted on being a puppeteer, which frequently gets him beat up in public because he's doing pornographic puppeteering on the streets.
I love at the beginning when Cameron Diaz or Lottie is like, maybe you should get a job.
Yeah.
It's like, I had this idea. What do you think about it?
Right.
And she's so sweet. Like, she's so
I think she's great. Yeah.
Kind and just
this is
loving.
Another connection to a Jordan Peele movie with nope, we have another chimp is a plot point here.
That's what I thought about.
Maybe a little scared remembering. It's like, oh, like this is, I guess, before you stopped having chimp actors, at least in that way. It's like, what's going to happen? Like, what was happening behind the scenes working with this guy? But I did not come across any horrifying stories. Yeah, I thought she was great and makes the character generally fun and funny when it is kind of a her passions seem to be initially be like power, etc., but it kind of changes with whatever the script needs. And I should also note to listeners, maybe not the most educated understanding of trans sexuality is in this movie. That could be triggering for some people. That's in there, but it's still kind of an odd dynamic. But ultimately, she ends up with Lottie, Cameron Diaz's character, as a lesbian couple, raising Lottie's kid from John Malkovich, kid that was conceived while Lottie was controlling John Malkovich, which I love how confusing. Anne has not seen this movie, but I just wanted to explain to her how weird it was by telling her what the ending was, and we need to almost write a diagram to explain what had happened.
Oh yeah.
We should talk about the man of the moment here, John Malkovich. I'm not sure if you've already came across this, but apparently Charlie Kaufman was very adamant about it never being anybody but John Malkovich. Malkovich even actually, upon reading the script well before it was going to be a movie, well before Spike Jonze was involved, liked the script and said, hey, if you want to make this with somebody else, I'd love to direct it. Kaufman said, it's got to be about you. It's got to be being John Malkovich, and turned down several other suggestions, and it was very adamant about that. Are you guys in general fans of John Malkovich? It's kind of hard not to think of him in this role because he's so in it. But did you have kind of a expectation about him prior to seeing this movie?
I mean,
association.
I had a non-expectation, and I think I like him more that he agreed to do this movie. It's just how I feel about it, and like it's so weird, and I like that it's also very like, I like that he didn't care enough about his name to throw it out, like to let it be the the name of this film, and like and it goes into the themes of what the film like becomes and it like is about, and especially like for an actor, I think that, and it talks about that too, that he's pretty self-serious about his acting career and like is reciting.
Oh yeah, he's reciting the Cherry Orchard.
Yeah.
He's doing Richard III when he's doing the plays. It's interrupted.
So very a very very like on brand for like quote unquote actor,
Right.
and that he kind of throws it all away. This is really funny and fun to watch. I loved stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he's great. I really like him in the Coen Brother movie, Burn
Yeah.
After Read. I think he's also very, comedically self-serious in that, and just causes an absolute shitstorm, and is great at over-enunciating things in a acting theater actor kind of way. That's very fun. Trenton, your take on the man.
I think the first time I had really seen him in anything was this movie, maybe. And so when I was watching it, like I recognized him kind of, but I didn't really,
Sure.
I couldn't necessarily place what I had seen him in. And this was maybe, I don't know, I was probably like 20 or 21, something like that. So it was a while ago. And so I hadn't seen him in anything else. So for me, like Being John Malkovich is like John Malkovich. And but one of my favorite John Malkovich roles is like one of his worst roles, the movie Rounders, where he's this Russian like card shark kind of like poker gangster kind of guy.
Yeah.
With Matt Damon and Edward Norton. It's like not that good of a movie, but it's one of my top 10 favorite movies. And he does a really bad Russian accent.
I think there's that I'm blanking on his name, but like on YouTube, I think it's with Wired. There is like the speech coach, and he's a dialect coach professional, and he does videos talking about good accents and bad accents, and John Malkovich's Russian accent. Yeah, he's great. But John Malkovich in that movie is one of the examples of a terrible accent. And he breaks down, Russians don't make this sound with this language. He gets into the details, and it's just like it's just kind of a vaguely Eastern European accent. But I really like an actor who doesn't mind being hammy and being truly good in things. I think John Malkovich is very good at being hammy, but also like he's great in Dangerous Liaisons. He's great in some other movies that are much more straightforward roles. But Trenton, you win this round. You definitely convinced me to rewatch this, and you also, I will say, you got me. No, actually, I'm going to save that for my recommendation. Never mind. But I was glad to be open to more of his cinematic world. Kaufman in particular. A question that I think has to come up is people are in one or two camps of Charlie Kaufman. Either directors are restricting his brilliance, and they shouldn't, in the case like this, or Eternal Sunshine, or he's a madman who needs to be reined in by a director. Do you, as someone who's particularly a fan of Charlie Kaufman, have a take on this? Or are you just kind of always happy with anything Kaufman?
I am a total Kaufman fanboy. I love everything that he's ever done. I mean, I didn't love I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It kind of annoyed me. I enjoyed watching it, but it's not my favorite. But everything that he does, I will watch it. I think, having read the screenplay, I can see why it was tamped down and they didn't go with that. But at the same time, I really want to see that movie from the screenplay. Like, I don't think it's filmable at all, but it sounds really cool. And also the thing with the devil, they did like sneak it in a little bit with the Flemmer building, or I think that's what it's called. So like the building is named after the guy who was like the host body to the devil in the screenplay. So you get a little bit of a hint of it peeking through. But yeah, I am wrongly or rightly enamored with pretty much everything he does.
I'm interested.
Fully respect.
Yeah, in like reading him now, especially after that little snippet. But maybe he's just a writer that you want to read all his screenplays. And
he has a novel out.
I have it downloaded. I haven't read it yet.
You and I are in a book club. You can really fuck up mine and Philip's day.
But, Philip will be so mad.
Yeah. Philip, you don't listen. It's fine. Megan, you were saying, sorry.
No, that's amazing. And I just feel like we'll become better writers, or at least a better imagination, having reading it. So I'm interested in that. I'm looking forward to seeking that out myself.
Yeah, he's so clever.
Yeah. Yes.
He is. He's definitely a talent. Any other areas of this movie that you guys want to make sure we address?
Well, this is
Oh,
not
sorry.
necessarily something that needs to be beat to death, but it helps me to kind of lead into whatever my recommendation is going to be, which I'm
Okay.
not sure what my recommendation is going to be, honestly, but
That's
it
okay.
comes from this idea. So,
Okay.
so being John Malkovich, like literally the concept of being John Malkovich means something different to like most of the main characters in the movie. So I would say Craig, Lottie, Maxine, Lester all have their own version of what it means to be John Malkovich and why that's valuable. And I think it's interesting to think about what it is, because for some of them it seems like one thing and then it's actually something totally different. Like for Maxine, at first it seems like she's just like, this is a kink for her, she's interested in having this new kind of experience. But then I think what sort of ties her character into, you guys thought it was a little bit one dimensional, and to me it seemed like there was something about her that was always sort of narcissistic, sort of seeking sort of a power over people. And I think that for her, she didn't even have to be John Malkovich, but just like her connection to it, that to that strange thing made her feel fulfilled in some way. And when Craig is able to finally fully control the body, that's when she connects to Craig, I guess. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I'll just say she connects with him at that point.
Sure.
And he says it's more than puppeteering, and she says no, it's more than puppets, it's controlling people. And that's basically her whole thing, is controlling and manipulating people. Like even going on a date with Craig, like she just wants to pull his strings, so to speak. And it's I think that's kind of the theme for her. Then Craig, it's something else. For Lottie, it's something else. For Lester, it's eternal life. It's pretty simple. And then for the customers, even, they have their own thing that they want to get out of being someone else or being John Malkovich. And I think that is maybe the philosophical question of the movie, is if you could do this thought experiment, if you could be in someone else's body, would you, and why? And I think that's interesting because there's a it's not like deep necessarily. I think it's interesting, it's clever, but a lot of people cite this as a philosophical movie, like, oh, movies that do philosophy. And I don't know about that. It is a thought experiment. I'll give it that, but I don't know if it's a philosophical movie. But that I guess would be my question. Is there any kind of philosophy that this is doing, or is it just like a fun way of thinking about something you haven't thought about before?
That's a great point, Drew. I'm glad you phrased it that way, because I think that also is a good one. Like sometimes there's things I don't like because of the type of person who's very adamant that it is something greater than it is. And I think I've been stuck at a party talking to somebody who says this is the deepest movie they've ever seen. I think Tarkovsky movies, I think Bergman movies, I think even Lynch movies go deeper places than this does in terms of moral and philosophical questions. So it is an interesting experiment. I think you're right. It does bring up those questions. I'm still thinking about my answer. So Megan, do you have, what do you think?
You said that was very well said, Trenton. I'll say, like, I appreciate that take on it, I feel like, and I found it so enjoyable watching it, but I think that I was just very entertained, like watching this movie for the first time, and entertained also by the very specific dialogue, like the way that they were expressing these things, I think was what I was kind of, grabbing onto and holding onto. And also for me, the little elements of, there was like a lot of little details that really amped it up for me in terms of like what I enjoy in film. Like I really like that, like his little monologue, I guess, of when he becomes a puppeteer, and they show like he has a memoir called like Off the Strings or something like that. I love stuff like that. that seemed straight out of like Parks and Recreation or something like that, you know, a parody in modern day like that. And that's the kind of stuff that like the little details that I love. There
The
was
orientation videos.
yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
the half size office, like I was going crazy. I love stuff
Is
like
that
that.
Olivia Spencer at the beginning who helps open the elevator?
Yeah,
With the Vegas? Yeah.
Octavia Spencer.
Octavia Spencer. Yeah, she's like her only being that for one. I was like, holy shit! I didn't realize who that was the first time I saw it.
I know. No, all of it. And like the little Alice in Wonderland reference of the door. Like there was just so many little like things going on that I was just happy enough, you know, to see all of that. And to me, it felt very more like sci-fi fun element of like, oh, and they do ask the questions and the funny philosophical questions of why they enter it and enter the body of John Malkovich. So it all felt like every character just felt very realized too, and kind of realistic in a sense, which is why I appreciate your take on Maxine and all of that. Like that, it just felt true to who they kind of were. And
another fun little cameo was David Fincher.
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Is that him being interviewed in the?
Yeah,
I did not realize that was David Fincher. Holy shit.
Oh my! And all the cameos, like
that Brad Pitt for like a second.
Yeah,
right?
That they were all willing to like go along with it too. I love stuff like that. Sean Penn was good. You know, just all of that. I love it. Love stuff like that.
I gotta say, I think Trent, the more I'm thinking about this, I think there is actually kind of a philosophical point here that the only people who are truly happy going to the host's body are Lester because he's having eternal life. And I think that is a kind of argument. Like what we actually want is just to not die, and and that would be the only way we'd actually be fulfilled because everyone else is unsatisfied or it's temporary. But you know, I do love that when Craig has figured out how to be John Malkovich long term, he starts like when Malkovich is acting like John Cusack's character. It's so great. His teeth looked a little more weird. He's got the weird hair, but it's like all his mannerisms are just this kind of giddy weirdo, not John Malkovich, respected actor. And I thought he really pulled that off great. But I think it does bring up the question of like fulfillment and unfulfillment. And the only way one would actually be fulfilled would be to live eternally, which I don't even believe that. I don't want to live forever.
I know.
But I think that is a arguable point. Or the flip side that's, and I don't think this works, but that it's more of a metaphor of being controlled, you know, by like all the people influencing us that we don't know about. But I don't really think that works for analysis of the movie, but I can see that was probably some shitty paper in college somebody wrote, right? Many times. Trent, was it you? I'm just
kidding. I plead the fifth.
Yeah, it was a much more funny movie than I expected and a more rewarding and fulfilling experience rewatching it. So thank you for choosing to be our villain here. I have no idea what we're going to do next. I'm terrified and excited. We have to have you back now.
That was my plan all along. You're my new host body. Host podcast.
Exactly. We love doing it. All right. Well, with that, should we... Oh, sorry. I just want to say one other last behind-the-scenes thing. John Cusack apparently became aware of this by asking his agent to find the most strange, unproducible script he could find, and was immediately on board with this. So, just happy to hear that he was an actor who just decided to do that.
Yes.
John Cusack is one of my favorite actors.
I'll
watch anything with John Cusack.
He was very good. Like all of the actors were really good in this. He was really really believable in this, and that's kind of what you need, and he was just great. I really liked
Everyone's had a professor that wears exactly what he's wearing this
whole
movie.
Yeah.
Well, Trent, as our guest, do you want to start us off with recommendations, unless anybody has a closing thought on the movie they want to share?
I think...
Do you need time?
Well, no, I have my recommendation. I'm just trying to think if there's anything that I missed that I wanted to talk about. And honestly, I think we just about covered everything. So my recommendation, I have two recommendations, and they're not like rewatches. Like I didn't like them at first, but they're more connected to the idea of movies that are philosophical, because I think that there is kind of a philosophical thread here, and they try to make you think about consciousness. He talks to the monkey at the beginning, is like, or the chimp, and he says, you know, I have consciousness. And then later, one of my favorite lines is, do you know what kind of a metaphysical can of worms this opens? Or something like that. And it's like, yeah, but you don't really talk about it. So I think there is an attempt at that. So one movie that I think actually does sort of open that metaphysical can of worms of consciousness is Ghost in the Shell. Is a kind of a similar idea to Being John Malkovich, of like moving consciousness to a different host body, but I think does it in a more philosophical way, and is just an amazing movie generally. So that's my first recommendation. Yes. And then my second is going to be Groundhog Day, because it's a fun, cheesy movie, but it also feels strongly philosophical to me. And also, in both Being John Malkovich and Groundhog Day, they both to me feel almost like a modern fairy tale. Like there's just kind of like a mythical thing. Like, it's weird. When I watch Being John Malkovich, I think about Rip Van Winkle. Like, there's something about the tone, something about it that like is very kind of timeless and mythical. I don't know. So both of those, I think Groundhog Day also has that sort of modern day fairy tale and also philosophical implications to it. And also kind of starts with a thought experiment. What if you live the same day over again?
Good pick, Trenton. Yeah.
Thank you.
Meg, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'll even pick it because I agree. I this movie almost reminded me Being John Malkovich had elements that reminded me of like straight out of like a Disney Channel original movie or something like that, with the elderly people like going into like, I don't know, that or even like a Goosebumps thing going on, something like that. Like, I agree that it felt very whimsical. So I'm laughing because my pick is like a little deranged version of that. But so my recommendation I want to give is called, I've talked with Seth about it, and I was trying to see if I don't think I recommended it on the podcast yet, which I tend to do. So, but this is a new one called, well, a new rec, I should say, called Lars and the Real Girl, and it's a very very low budget. This is a Ryan Gosling movie where he is dating. He's a very odd fellow, and he has like trouble in life. It's kind of implied that he may even be on the spectrum, is like what people suggest. It's never said, it's never really talked about, but he lives with his like sister and stuff like that. Never had a girlfriend, gets a girlfriend, but she is a like sex doll named Bianca, and
I thought her name was Barbie.
I think
And a different movie, Trenton.
Oh,
well, she is brunette, Trenton, so she can't be Barbie. Yeah,
I don't know. It sounds like the same movie.
This is the most deranged Ken you could ever see. Like, it's like, it's kind of the opposite of Ken, which
no, I've seen it. I love that movie.
And for Ryan Gosling, really interesting. Like, he's very weird, and just the movie's very weird, but also it has that like sincerity, and people kind of take it seriously. Like, they take what's going on very seriously. So but extremely low budget. Like, there's maybe 4 main characters, including the doll. So like, I just think it was like very similar, like things going on that I really enjoyed too. The sincerity in it was there as well. That kind of, I do feel like you need for absurdity, and even though they're more like, the people around him are like really like, what are you doing a lot of the time, it's not distracting and like in that annoying sense that we talked about too, that you have to explain what's going on. People kind of give it up towards the end, and it is a really interesting experimental movie, I would say.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought that. That's a great movie that I've not seen in such a long time, but I think I have a copy of it. It's also, while it's not there, one of the few movies that takes place in my new home state of Wisconsin. So some Wisconsin pride around Lars and the Real Girl, for me at least.
Yeah.
But I think that movie, like I said, he's never diagnosed. I think that's really important. Like, there's some implications, but like, it does work at that where you were both saying, kind of like a fairy tale way of like, there's a logic to the story that works largely because it's not this character has X diagnosis and here's how we're treating it.
Yeah.
It is a little bit more of a whimsical thing than that, and it's a surprisingly sweet movie. Yeah, it's a great little indie film, and love Ryan Gosling for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm going to continue the tradition of acknowledging my failures here, my inaccuracies with movie tastes, and going to, like we did last time for Amazon, acknowledge another movie that I've come around on. Maybe the biggest one, Citizen Kane. When I first saw Citizen Kane, I thought it was very dull, and it was also kind of in vogue for a fellow 16-year-old film snobs who hadn't seen most movies to be an asshole, but I was not that good, and I was definitely leaning into that for a while. Rewatched it in my mid-20s. I was like, oh yeah, it's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's incredible. It's amazing. And Orson Welles is fantastic with everything he did behind the scene. Obviously, there's the Mank co-writing it too. That's its own can of worms. But yeah, Citizen Kane is actually as good as people will tell you. And it's also pretty quick. It goes by a lot quicker than I remembered. It's not like this 3-hour epic. I think it's 2 hours. But it is an astounding film and an indie film. So if you're like me and you put off watching what many people consider the greatest movie of all time, go ahead and check it out. You're going to have fun.
Great choice. I think Vertigo passed Citizen Kane for number one.
Yeah.
Like
Vertigo did, and then the Belgian film.
Yeah.
I still need to see that. Jean Villain, I think. But no, I was actually very happy when Vertigo passed it. That was a big day for me when Vertigo surpassed. I think it is better than Citizen Kane.
Of just number one film of all time lists
from Sight and Sound's polls, yeah.
Okay.
These Sight and Sound,
like according to directors and
yeah, that's right. It was the directors.
Film critics, maybe.
Yeah, I was used to Citizen Kane.
Every 2 or 4 years. Right.
Taking the number one spot.
The official answer, So.
Oh, very nice.
You should watch Film and Odyssey. Have you seen that?
Ooh, no.
I have not. It's like a documentary series, right?
Yeah, and they have an episode where they go into a little bit about Orson Welles and Citizen Kane, and it kind of helped me to appreciate it more.
To make sure I'm not too optimistic this time, I did not like Mank, the David Fincher movie, bringing him up again, largely because I just don't think it's true. That's the movie that posits that the screenwriter who's co-credited as the screenwriter is the sole screenwriter, which is not just a fan theory. That's a very common theory in Hollywood. I primarily don't think it's true because Orson Welles made several other great movies that he wrote. So, yeah. But it's an entire movie dedicated to that concept. Well, folks, I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, Trenton, for coming on, for being our heel, for getting us the wrestling audience that we need. You have a high mark to hit again next time because I cannot reiterate how much I really disliked this movie when I first saw it.
I know.
And I was surprised I wasn't watching it again yesterday and generally having a great time. So thank you for bringing it to me.
Trenton was kind of my hero. I really enjoyed this watch for me this time. So
well, that's why you're film optimists.
That's right. Yeah, thanks, Trenton. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me back.
We'll do it again.
Absolutely.